All right, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. We are gathered here to have the Financial Subcommittee meeting of May 14th for the RWRAC, and I would like to have Jeanette do our call to order.
Good morning, everyone.
Sorry, I mean the roll call.
No, we're good. We're good. I knew what you meant. Looks like we have a full house. Sheila Bowen, our new member.
Yep.
Matt Mathewson.
Here.
Katlo Shipek.
Here.
Oh, perfect. Eric Sulwald.
Here.
And Kirsten Wainswick.
Here.
All members are in attendance.
Excellent. So, darn it, something just happened to my agenda. I apologize. What's next on the agenda while I try and recover that? I'm sorry.
Virtual meeting reminders.
Perfect. Okay, so for those joining virtually, here are the guidelines to help facilitate a well-ordered virtual meeting. Please mute your microphones. This will help ensure we don't have any feedback or otherwise have background noises to interfere with the speaker. If a committee member would like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature. And remember to lower your hand once your question has been addressed. When you are ready to speak, please unmute your microphone. This is especially important during votes. And don't forget to mute again when you have finished. As a reminder, audience members are only permitted to speak during the call to the audience unless called upon by the committee. This meeting is also being recorded to satisfy open meeting law requirements. And with that, I think we go to the pledge. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
nation under God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice
for all.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, somehow I must have closed the agenda. I perfectly apologize.
That is okay. Next is the safety share, because you already did the call to the audience.
Thank you.
Oh wait, yes. Did you do the call to the audience?
I did not.
Okay, do the call to the audience.
Okay, call to the audience. If there's anybody online, I don't believe there is any. So moving on, let's have a safety share, and I will recover my agenda during the safety share. There we go. Anybody have one? Jackson,
I'll do one.
Or anyone?
Thank you.
I have one too.
Okay, Art, why don't you go first?
All right. So just a reminder, I don't know how many of you travel back and forth to Phoenix, but I have been doing an inordinate amount of traveling back and forth to Phoenix, probably more than I would care to admit. And there is a widening project most of the way through there. So just be mindful of your speeds, be mindful of the construction workers that are doing that. And they're doing night work, which is even, in my opinion, sometimes even worse and more dangerous when driving back at night. So just a reminder to be safe on your travels back and forth to Phoenix and mindful of the speed limits and whatnot out there for the workers that are working on making that a 4-lane divided.
Jackson,
Thank you, Art.
I just, I'll add, of course, throughout the year, the seasons, we go through the time of sunrise and sunset changes, and the location of which it comes up and comes and sets and goes down is slightly different as well. So just remember, especially, it used to be a lot of us would show up to work. It was still dark outside, but now it's more likely light, or you're driving while the sun's coming up. So just make sure your windshield is clean and your wipers are working good. And that if you have a windshield cleaner, to spray onto your window to help clean it, it's really important to have a clear, clean windshield whenever you're going into the sun. It gives you a better visibility. Otherwise, your vision, your visibility is restricted. So that's mine.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson.
All right, so now let's go to the minutes. Were there any corrections other than maybe some that Matt, I'm guessing, may have sent
No,
Jeanette?
Matt
Or
had no corrections. I rocked it this time.
I thought I saw one Mr. River rather than Rivera in there or two. I think when I was blasting past, just look for that. The only
Okay.
other one that I have is on page 4 when it talks about forwarding the updated designated management area. It says just map. I think it was map and documents because I think there's a wider set of documents that are about that DMA agreement in the discussion.
Okay, I will add that in.
Yeah. Oh, Sheila, go ahead, please jump in.
Just wanted to confirm, since I was not in attendance, I'm assuming I will not vote on this item.
You weren't a member yet.
You could abstain.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay,
suppose you
that's
could
perfect.
abstain.
Thank you. Then I'll abstain. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So with those minor adjustments,
Mhm.
can we have a call for approval of the minutes?
Eric has his hand up.
Oh, Eric. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I move we accept the minutes as adjusted.
Have a second. Matt raised his hand for the second. Perfect. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstains? We'll just say that.
Abstain.
Okay. The motion carries. Minutes have been approved. So let's just move right into our agenda. And thank you, Jaime, for that memo that we've been talking about with some Santa Rita resource facility background information. I just wanted to open up to the floor for a discussion about that document that Jaime gave. Or Jaime, do you want to walk through it first?
Would you
I
like me
can
to
if you
share?
like. Sure.
Okay, 2 seconds.
And for
Nope, not that one.
background, yeah, for the
Not that
background
one.
for our new members, Catlo and Sheila, this was discussed back in March as just an idea. There were some items that pertained to the the Santa Rita Resource Recovery Program that or facility and program that the background assumptions just weren't necessarily obvious. So we had just asked that Jaime document the ways that these 4 items that he brings up at the top of this are being handled since they're not specific line items and are future items. So with that, Jaime, take it away.
Okay, so I'll address each one of the 4 items lightly, and you can read through the document itself. And if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. On the Green Valley facility clean closure process and budgeting, it was just a brief summary of the process of closing or clean closing the facility to ADEQ standards. And we're using the Royal Road previous clean closure as a template to follow on this next facility clean closure. It is all O&M because closure is not a construction and we'll lose that asset. So it is considered O&M, and we handle that in Royal Road through consultants, QCLs, to develop the clean closure plan for ADEQ's approval. And we use job order contracts to perform the testing and selective cleaning that we needed to do to achieve that ADEQ requirements. On the second one, the effluent disposal options and budget for the new Santa Rita recovery facility. So we're early in the design. There are many options for effluent disposal, and the default or more economical version of that disposal option would be to send it to the Santa Cruz, which is a pipeline that heads about 1.5 miles to the west of the parcel. So we're considering that part of the budget for the facility until we can nail down the actual selected effluent disposal option, and then we can then put a name and a budget to it more accurately. So at this point, we're saying that our facility budget includes generally the effluent disposal of that water. The third one, future connection to the Corona de Tucson service area. It is possible, it is in the right direction, it's flowing downhill, but it's so far into the future and development is slowly creeping from east to west. So at some point, development will drive that connection, and we're hoping that development pays for itself and funds this pipeline that will eventually connect in the future the Corona de Tucson area to the facility at Sahuarita. Forecasted delivery of the Canoa Ranch Phase 2. We're about to go to the board for the first phase, hopefully this 26th board meeting of May. The second phase is under design under the current phase. So we'll have a full design once this first GMP or first phase is executed by the board. And all that will remain is for us to select, budget and select for the second phase, which we're definitely wanting to do, but we're not ready to put it in the program yet until everything settles with the budget for the Sahuarita plant and interceptor. So we don't want to encroach on the flexibility of performing the facility and the interceptor with a phase 2 until everything settles or it's more solid on that program. At that point, then we can start planning, do we do it concurrently or do we need to push and wait until after the facility expenses are realized? And so that's kind of the short version of the 4 items that came up during that meeting.
Right. So are there any questions or discussion items? I see Eric, you raised your hand. Go ahead, please.
I'd let Sheila go first. I'll back in after her comments. I'm curious
Okay.
at what she has to present.
Okay. Sheila, please.
Mine is more just catch up, and I apologize. So the Green Valley facility, has it aged out or something? Is that why it's being closed in favor of the new Santa Rita facility?
So the Green Valley facility is on schedule to be augmented, rehabilitated. So there's a large amount of money that needs to be invested in that facility that we can either spend it there and then spend the same amount later on the Sahuarita facility being built to increase the size and coverage of that area. So it is working
Also,
now.
I mean, let me jump in too and just say one thing, that the Sheila, the Green Valley facility is really 2 different facilities on that property. One is originally a 2 million gallon per day oxidation ditch that treats water to high quality. And the other are just lagoons with minimal treatment, a little aeration in there. And so we're already, like at 2.5 MGD. Of course, it fluctuates between snowbird time and non-snowbird time, but we're going to have to ultimately, in order to treat it all, we're going to have to build another plant there to get rid of the lagoons. And as Jaime mentioned, we have quite a bit of investment we'd have to make in that site. And additionally, we also would have to make a big investment in some recharge because we can't recharge all our water, and we're selling more than we are required to Robeson just to handle it all right now. So I'm sorry, Jaime, you can continue.
No, you cover it. Just kind of parallel to that, the service area that is to the north of the plant is going uphill to where Green Valley is. So that would require, if we were to develop that, something similar to Continental Ranch, which has the biggest pump station we own, and it is a high maintenance, high operational effort type of facility. It is something that now hindsight we would try to avoid today, but now we have it, and we don't want to do the same type of setup in the Green Valley area where we have a big pump station just sending water up to the south in this case, which is uphill.
That makes sense. Okay.
And-
Second question.
And one
Oh,
more thing
sorry.
too, originally, you know, we were working closely for the past number of years with the town to be partners. And for instance, they were kind of looking at maybe being initially being a 25% to 75% partner with us, and they would have contributed 25% of the capital they would have owned and 25% of the capacity, and then we would have split the operational costs similarly or exactly whatever where the respective flow influence came from, whether it was the county areas or the town's areas. But ultimately, the town said, you know, this would work great. We think we can get there, but unfortunately, we don't have enough money to do that. So we're going to have to back out here. But we sure would like if you could help the town with some of its future plans for growth and development. And so we would be willing to give you back the majority of the DMA that was given to them back when that Rancho Sarita plant went up. And so that's kind of the changes that have evolved over time in a nutshell, some of the additional things. But Jaime's point about having to put in a big pump station down there, it just makes sense. We have the property now, makes sense to put it at the lowest spot and take Sarita flow, take Green Valley flow, take growth to the east as it happens going towards Corona de Tucson. And that's the overall summary from my perspective.
Perfect. Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue. And I don't want to monopolize everything, so I'll be quick. The FICO specific plan, if I recall, they were needing to build a couple of plants. So would these then go to this new facility and be a developer funded portion of it?
That's the intent, yes.
Okay. And then last question, is this going to be considered a regional facility then, like the others where there's the effluent agreement? And I don't recall the specific parameters, but basically like water utilities have some rights to the effluent, or is it all going to be treated like a sub-regional facility where there's no sharing of that effluent?
And we call it a regional facility because it's serving, you know, a bigger area, and it's serving the town as well as Pima County, and it's serving likely will potentially serve the Indian Nation because they have a little wetlands, a little spray field over there at the casino at Pima Mine Road and I-19 that seems like they would like to get out of that business, but you know, we're not that far along in the conversation yet. But yeah, the water would belong to Pima County, but of course, that's one of the key parts of this project is what to do with the effluent. Do we sell it for the maximum money? Do we, you know, turn it into riparian habitat? Do we give it away? You know, I mean, there's all kind of options. I won't even get into them on this conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, go ahead.
Couple of things
Eric?
I'd like to go over. Jaime, thank you for the memo. I appreciate it. Found some answers to questions that I had. But let me touch on a couple of things. One is the Canoa Ranch extension. Now, you've indicated that the Santa Rita Highlands, which is the new project south of the Escondido Wash, which is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,100 homes, you are going to be putting a fee of about $6,000 per lot to help pay for that extension. I'm not opposed to that, but is that also going to have the required payment for the connection fee for each lot? So that in reality, this would be a cost of close to $11,000 per lot for building a home there.
That is the intent. The surcharge would be on top of the connection fee.
Okay, so you're taking the connection fee and the surcharge. Thank you. Number two, you're putting that on the Santa Rita Highlands, but Block 27 South is going to have 336 homes. That's also going to have effluent that's going to go into that line. Why is that not being charged a $6,000 override?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the last subdivision that you mentioned. What we look for was the connection point south. So anything south of the Canoa Ranch interchange, that roundabout. So anything south of that is accounted for in the calculation for the surcharge. And I don't know specifically if that one you mentioned is included there or if it's elsewhere.
It is proposed based upon the drawings I've seen because of my position with the Green Valley Water District, that their connection is going to be south of the roundabout at Canoa Ranch Road, I-19. So I would strongly suggest that you get a hold of Fairfield Homes and let them know there's going to be an approximate $6,000 charge for that privilege of joining that.
Yeah, so I think we've reached out to all the developers in the area and their engineers, and with each one of them, we need to set up a sewer service agreement. So they all are going to be aware, if they're not already, that they need to account for that.
I know that WLB is doing the engineering work for both projects, so hopefully they're well aware of that. But this also brings up another point. As the area to the east of Nogales Highway going up Sahuarita Road towards Corona del Tucson, would this also be an area where the department would ask for a surcharge to help pay for the interceptor that would come down from the Corona de Tucson plant down to the new regional plant?
It depends. If the developer pays for it, then there's no charge needed because development is paying for it. In the case of Canoa Ranch, developers were originally intended to put that in, and through the years they were not able to. So we had other also benefits of connecting south. So in this case, we did the surcharge because we share on the cost of and the benefits of that new interceptor. If anything coming from the Corona de Tucson area is intended to be funded by development as it grows.
Our general model is developers put in those pipelines and then they hand them over to us. But in some cases like this one at Canoa Ranch, you know, they kind of procrastinated, and, you know, the market and the economy and their plans just didn't align. And then they finally were ready to do something. And then they had a moratorium for a while because of the frontage road water line and stuff and the repaving and whatnot. But ultimately, because we wanted to shut down the Rito Vista and we needed to get service to our Canoa Ranch, we needed to extend the line for county reasons. So we're paying for about half of it, but we're putting that 6,000. That bill will cover about the other half because that's what they should have put in over the many years we've been trying to get them to put it in. And we've done this in other places. Jaime can probably recite the other 2 or 3 we've done. And the Corona de Tucson one, it's a wait and see. We always will wait and see if, you know, development is what's going to drive the need to get it all the way down to the new Sarita plant or Santa Rita plant. And if there's a benefit or reason for the county to jump in to close a gap or something, we would consider doing so. And like Jaime's just indicated, probably have a surcharge on some of that. But we just don't know until what the developers are planning to do yet. And so that one's a little further out and our crystal ball isn't that clear.
Well, I agree with you, Jackson, that the crystal ball has got a lot of fog in it. But I'm also thinking that the interceptor that you would have to put in from the Corona de Tucson down to the Sahuarita to the Santa Rita plant will, it can't be piecemeal. It has to be probably all done at once, where I would think that as development is taking place within the Corona de Tucson and moving out from the town of Sahuarita, that there would be a surcharge on those properties, and those monies would be held aside to help defray a portion of the cost of that interceptor. I just think that that would be one way, and I think there are probably others that I haven't even thought of, but
Yeah.
there'd be one way to allow the buildup of some reserve funds to help pay for that project as it takes place.
Yeah, and there was, again, it's the timing of where and which development wants to go, but we envision that there's possibilities that somebody that was building west of Corona de Tucson potentially could put in a temporary pump station. It would be a smaller pump station, and they could pump back to Corona de Tucson till that facility gets filled up. But in the end, the long-term solution would be to connect Corona de Tucson to the Santa Rita facility. But it just depends on how development was going to work its way across that several miles of stretch that have to be, that need the pipeline to get it to the plant.
Right. Thank you both for those comments. Let me work on another project, part of this, and your report, Jaime. Again, I appreciate the report. You've discussed the effluent, and you don't get effluent until somebody flushes a toilet, and that effluent is coming basically from the water purveyors in our area who are providing water to the homes and businesses, and then it's turned around and flushed and comes into the county system, the wastewater. I am, and I'm going to be very personal about this. I sit on the Green Valley Domestic Water Improvement Board of Directors. You're well aware of that. We are pushing with the other water purveyors here in the sub-AMA, which is basically the area that the Santa Rita plant is going to take care of. We're going to be pushing very hard that water, that effluent that is treated and provided, go back into the aquifer as a recharge as far south as we can get it, so that it benefits all of us. We're trying to push this as close to net zero in our pumping and recharge as we possibly can. And I know that at our next board meeting, we have a resolution that will be sent to both the wastewater department and the Board of Supervisors, pushing that end. And I realize we're the small potatoes in that group, but overall, I want to see this done. And I'm probably more outspoken than I should be on this, but I am very strongly supporting that. Yes, it's recharged. I have no issue with the department collecting the water credits for that. And what they do with those water credits afterwards is up to them. But the recharge is a very valuable commodity to this local area, and I want to keep it there.
Yeah, and so Eric, all good stuff, and appreciate your passion for that. And one of the topics that we're going to present to the board that we still have to work through a lot of details, but the county, because there's already long-term agreements here in what we call the metropolitan area, in the Tucson area, where our two big plants of Agua Nueva and Tres Rios, the Sawarsa, through the Bureau of Reclamation for the Tohono O'odham Nation, gets 28,200 acre feet from a settlement against Tucson Water and some other water providers. And so they get that forever, 28,200 acre feet. And then everything that's left on those two big plants, Tucson Water gets 90% of it, and we get 10%. And right now, 28,200 acre feet is approximately half of the effluent here in the metropolitan area from the two big plants. So, the other 28 or 20 whatever thousand acre feet, 90% goes to the city, 10% goes to the county. However, at the sub-regional facilities, we believe legally that all that water belongs to the county. But one of the proposals that will be in front of the board is that, hey, really the county is not a water provider. And I've already got over 40,000 acre feet in my bank account of water credits, and it's like, great, but it doesn't buy me any coffee or another borough or any of that stuff, So I was going to propose that whoever, the water provider was, and of course, like Green Valley Water, maybe, and it would be this, we would just use some factor. We wouldn't try to go to minutia, but let's just say 40% of all water that the water providers send out ends up at a wastewater plant. It's some number, 40% is one estimate, but it's somewhere in that range, maybe, that we would let each water provider purchase those credits, that water from us, so that we could monetize it and minimize our costs because it's a revenue stream. And through the one water concept, all the water companies could buy their portion of that effluent if they want to. And if not, the county will put it in a bank account and, sell it other ways. That's one thing we're looking at, just FYI.
Well, Jackson, thank you. And I would hope that we could be part of that conversation.
And you will be.
And all. The only other thing that I had is I have never heard, or at least I don't think I have either heard or read anything about what maybe be the potential cost of doing some remodeling work or remanufacturing work at the Green Valley plant to keep it in a position to operate over the next 10 years. And, I've heard a couple of numbers thrown, but I've never really felt that anybody was comfortable with it. And the reason I'm saying this is, again, my mantra has been, and you folks have heard it too many times, that it would be reasonable to spread the building of the Santa Rita plant out, maybe do the interceptor line the first 3 years, and then the back 5 years would be the building of the Santa Rita plant. That would financially help out the county in their programs. It would help financially the district or the department not having to raise rates for anybody. And it would allow the life of the Green Valley facility to just be extended a little bit of time to allow it to continue. And the other factor that I keep asking questions to people I know, whether they be in the realty market, the development market and all, I cannot get any kind of feeling that development in Sahuarita is anything more than Rancho Sahuarita. Everything else is basically very, very quiet. And so the rush, and maybe that's the wrong word, the desire to do this plant in a short period of time now, we might have more time than that. And I strongly ask us to consider that. And I thank you for my time.
Okay, Sheila, you still have your hand up. So did you want the floor again?
No, I'm sorry. I forgot to put it down.
I have one corollary question. I don't know in this discussion if it was said one way or the other, so I'll just ask it. Has any consideration, Jaime, been made to do these surcharges on lots that are south of the Green Valley plant that will be benefiting from the Santa Rita interceptor in the future in order to recover in a similar way for pre-building this interceptor before the development comes online? I'm just curious about that.
Not on the interceptor for Sahuarita. The thought has been put in place on the Canoa Ranch area at this point.
Okay, I'm just curious if that might
Yeah,
help some
it-
calculus in the future.
It,
Since
it
I
is
was-
possible, and we can consider that it's thought that that interceptor is relieving an existing treatment facility, so it's something the department needs to allow for this new facility to come into operation.
Just noting that it's also being sized though for future growth. Eric?
Mhm.
Yeah, just one point. If you figure in Block 27 South and the Santa Rita Highlands project development, that's about 1,500 homes. That's $9 million based on the 6,000. If you add the other $5,000 approximately for the sewer line, for the hookup fees, then and those hookup fees, I hope, are paying for remodeling, maybe the Green Valley plant, the helping the cost of the build of the Santa Rita facility. But between those two, you are looking at a sizable, chunk of money that's going to come in from that. And the other, what happens to development south of the Santa Rita Highlands, which is the end of the Canoa Ranch property, south of that, is also going to be probably have to pay some of that those surcharges for their development. So it's going to take a long time to get all the money in, but you'll have that extension well paid for and then some.
With that, I'd like to move us on in our agenda. Thank you, Jaime, for the discussion on this. I think this would be useful to send to the rest of the RAC, just for documentation purposes. That was the purpose of Jaime's memo. Curious if I have a motion for this background document to be sent to the fuller RAC.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All right. All in favor of forwarding this on, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries on that. I think the other item was just a quick mini update on the DMA negotiations, if there's been any further movement in the last couple months.
Yeah, I think the DMA discussion with the town of Sarita is basically laid out. The last item we updated was they're finalizing the map, so they account for the areas they can serve versus the areas that they cannot serve. They were still tweaking the line here or there. So the next step, I believe, is for them to send it to their town council. And once they approve and agree, then we'll go ahead and send it to our board. We don't have a finalized document, but it should be fairly simple, and a map. And I believe that's on kind of the town of Sarita's court to finalize and send to us.
So when you say that you're going to send it to the board, do you mean that it goes to the Board of Supervisors?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, just keep us apprised of those developments and when those things are happening, I guess is all we'd ask. So any further discussion on that topic? Okay, hearing none. Let's go to Art for all things rate workbook. Any updates for us, Art? I know you've been running scenarios that we've been talking about for the last couple of months.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good morning. Brief introduction for Sheila and Catlow. My name is Art Guadon. I'm the Director of Finance and Risk Management for Pima County, and my team works really closely with this committee and the full RWRAC on pretty much all things finance. We're basically tied at the hip with Jackson and Jaime, so we work very closely with them. Just by way of introduction, the rest of the team members that are on the call, Michelle, Andy, David, Meredith, and Nick, are all members of my team in one fashion or another, and we all work together to serve this committee and serve Jackson as well. So pleasure to meet you. I look forward to meeting you in person here soon. With respect to the rate workbook and financial plan discussion, we do have some good news. And we do have some maybe not so good news. Good news is that we received the updated financial estimate from Kimley Horn on the reduction of the size of the Santa Rita facility this morning. And so I think there's some good news in there as far as what the overall cost would be to reduce that size. Maybe the not so good news is that we just received it this morning, and so we don't have formative updates on updating our financial plan with that information as yet. I do expect that we'll be able to plop that new information in with some conversation with Jackson and Jaime, of course, about how we would where it would be pertinent in the financial plan to reduce those costs, whether it's spread out through the life of the facility, if it's taken in chunks between years. So there is some conversation that needs to happen between us and Wastewater in terms of how we structure the construction moving forward. But it was a sizable reduction. So that is good news for the rate plan. As I mentioned at the RWRAC last month, that was sort of the linchpin to our, what I would call more final scenario on what we're going to do and what we're going to present to county admin, and then have conversations with Jackson and Jaime about what that implication of that reduction is before we bring that back over to the finance subcommittee or the full RWRAC, depending on the timing of how that layers in with your meetings versus the full RWRAC. I know the full RWRAC is scheduled to meet on the 28th. Is that correct? I think that's correct. So we just got the information today, and we will begin to work on that and turn that around so we can get that in front of county administration. And I'm sure Jackson and Jaime very much want to know what that looks like as well, so that we can then get another rate workbook scenario out to you guys for your review and consideration. Whether that all can take place before the full RWRAC on the 28th, I don't know. I know we're all busy and we have competing schedules, but we'll do our best for that. That is the update that I have for today. I don't have anything new to share as far as documentation. I can anticipate the question about, can we see a financial plan? At this point, without a rate workbook and a defined plan forward, that document stands as a shell and then as a template, and we're ready to update it. And I would prefer not to share a scenario that we know is not going to come to fruition in that document. I would rather wait until we have a more defined scenario that we are endeavoring to implement. I've even talked internally about potentially maybe not putting out a financial plan, given the fact that we're already in May and don't have yet a clear scenario that the county is comfortable moving forward with. I fully recognize that a financial plan is, we can put out a financial plan, and I think Jackson's made reference to this before, but that financial plan is going to change very quickly after it's put out, because of construction estimates and getting further into the project design and construction. So it'll be an evolving document that changes year over year. So there is the possibility that maybe we put that in the top drawer until we have more information next year. Because I do want to put out a financial plan that we are all comfortable with, that we are at least reasonably confident that we can that today that is the plan moving forward. So there is some consideration that I will be talking to county admin about with respect to that. So I saw Eric had his hand up and then quickly put it down. I'm sure there's other questions from the group.
I'm
So let me
never
pause.
sure whether to raise my hand. I do have some questions for you, Art, and this is just more thought experiment housekeeping. So I know at our last meeting, we had talked about kind of 4 total scenarios that you were running. There was the and they're in the minutes better than what I can say them right now, but the first one was, you know, reduce CIP, you know, across the board in some way. There was reduce all other CIP projects. And then there was the spread the Santa Rita out 3 additional years to be a 5-year, you know, and maybe cut the peak off of that. And then this one that Jackson brought to the table, all with the idea of talking to county administration about the 25-year amortization possibility versus 15, but you hadn't been able to meet with county administration about that. I'm just curious about those other scenarios, or is a joint something here being run, and what has the discussions led to regarding the 25, which I think you heard from folks on this subcommittee. There's some general support for that scenario.
Yeah, that's a good question. We did have the conversation with county admin about those thought experiments, as well as the reduction in the 25, or not the reduction, the expansion of the amortization period on the SRFF or SRRF project from 15 to 25 years. Ironically or coincidentally enough, when I was having the day I was having that conversation was either a week or a few days after our last RWRAC meeting or our last financial subcommittee meeting, where Jackson floated the idea of reducing the size from 8 to 6. And so when I went in to talk to county admin, they were aware of that potential scenario. And then at that point, they'd asked me to come back to them with that scenario in hand, because they think that might be a logical path forward if we don't need, if the county truly doesn't need to build an 8 million gallon facility. And so as this committee is waiting, county administration is also waiting on that scenario, which we just received today. So that was the direction. And I haven't been able to get in front of county admin with any other scenarios, just because of the timing that it takes to, you know, do the financial planning estimate from the consultant perspective, and then getting it back over to us, and then us being able to analyze that, figure out what it means, and plot that information back into the rate workbook for the committee's consideration. So I just want to make sure that I'm being clear on the thought experiments. They were done as a means of, hey, you know, if we wanted to just truly only build this facility and do no other capital, which full disclosure, I don't know if that's necessarily a realistic opportunity, because some of the CIP is already in progress. And can Jackson and Hyman realistically pause construction on those projects? I don't believe so, not without some negative repercussions from both probably, an operational perspective and or, just from the cost of construction to pause that, what that would do to out years as far as the construction in industry and environment, what that might do to costs later on. So those were just more of, hey, if you don't want to give anywhere else, then this is an opportunity. But I don't know how realistic those were. Those were more of just, again, they were thought experiments. I think we're going to land somewhere. If I had to use my foggy crystal ball, as Eric alluded to earlier, I think we're probably going to land somewhere on doing a smaller project, with potentially moving out the amortization period on the debt of that facility, which, by the way, I think is a good idea, regardless. Just from a overall financial perspective, it extends, it creates generational equity for that project. And so I think that's a good idea, regardless, but that's something that I have to talk with continue the conversation with county admin on. So I know that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I hope it answered the question.
No, that helped. Thank you very much. It sounds like put everything on pause to get this information from a program manager, and now you'll run numbers with that and see where things land, and then it may loop back around to the 25-year amortization or the spreading out the project a little bit longer or whatever. I will yield the floor to Matt.
Thanks, Kirsten and Art. So, you know, it's kind of shocking to hear that we might not have a financial plan, not necessarily for any, I guess, clearly objective purpose, but just because we've always had one. And it's always been part of what our committee does is review and recommend approval of an annual financial plan. And I just took a minute to look back at the committee's foundational ordinance that the board passed. And one of the requirements says annually review the revenue requirements of the sanitary sewerage system and recommend to the governing body rate adjustments as required. So I think that's the context for our annual financial plan, is to embody and present this committee's annual review. But then if there's not going to be a rate adjustment required, I guess maybe that that provision could be read in a way that allows us to skip a year without a financial plan if there's not going to be any rate adjustment required as a result of the department's revenue requirements. Anyway, just I guess weighing in a little bit on the unusual event of not having a financial plan during a year.
Yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit. I certainly can appreciate and I figured that I would get some sort of deer in the headlight type response to that. And I'm not suggesting that it is going to happen. I just think that this is a big, massive project with a lot of financial implications, as we've all realized over the course of the last, when we started this discussion in January and we're in May, and it has yet to be resolved. So I think that speaks to the complexity of the project and of the project in which its effect on the wastewater financials. And I also will say that I agree with your sentiment with respect to what you just read from the ordinance, but I would also counter that this committee, along with the full RWRAC, has already said it's not interested in increasing rates beyond what we proposed last year, or what we proposed and the board ultimately recommended last year. And so your review of the needed revenues in some ways is limited by the desire to not impact rates. So, it is sort of a awkward situation. But we will have the updated information. I don't want to put the staff on the spot, so I won't, but I'm going to push to try and get this information updated in time for the May 28th RWRAC meeting. And we'll see what we can do to meet that deadline. I think there's, if the committee does feel strongly that it does want to put a rate financial plan out, then we can do that. It just might not be until June, maybe July. And if you're okay with that, then we can proceed as such. We're going to be, at the end of the fiscal year, beginning of the new fiscal year before that comes out. And, there would be a new financial plan that comes out 6 months later. So, it was just something I floated. It doesn't have to follow that. It was just something that I floated.
Thank you, Art, for those explanations. And I guess just a follow-up question then. So typically, and I've only been on the committee for a year and a half here or so I've only seen this a couple of times, but typically this, the rate workbook and financial plan go through the financial subcommittee, the RWRAC gets voted on, goes to the Board of Supervisors, but it's really the Board of Supervisors that are approving the new budgets, I guess. So what are the timeframes of your work and Board of Supervisors? Just remind me of that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Board of Supervisors is they received the county administrator's recommended budget on April 17th. We are set to go before the board on May 26th. That's the next meeting for approval of the tentative budget. Now, what the tentative budget does is it sets a budget ceiling above which we can't exceed our expenditures next fiscal year, but we can move money around within that between the tentative budget adoption, which again is May 26th, and final budget adoption, which is June 23rd. Final adoption sets the budgets in place, the rates, the revenues, the expenditures, the tax rates. That sets that in stone for FY27, which begins July 1. And so this is all in my experience here, and it's only been one cycle with the RWRAC. It's all been sort of done in concert with those timelines. And this year is no exception. The challenge has been nailing down what the size of the facility and how we're going to phase it in, and what's the implication on the rate workbook, and then subsequently the financial plan. But I think is with the direction early on that there was not an appetite to increase rates beyond what had already been sent and approved to the board. I think we're working well within that framework and that parameter, and trying to figure out what the best short-term and long-term financial plan is for wastewater as we endeavor to build this $247 million plus facility over the next 5 years. So it is complex. There is a lot of discussion that happens and that goes into a project with this size. I've talked to several stakeholders who were here during the last construction facility of this magnitude, and much of the same conversations were held, I believe. That's what I've been told. And so I think we're in a good spot, right? We have all the information that we have right now, and my team will get to work on the updated information and bring that back. And I do believe we'll, working with Jackson and Jaime and his team and the RWRAC and the financial subcommittee, will get to a place where we can all feel confident in the path forward.
Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions. Appreciate the explanation. With that, I think we've moderately come to the end of our formal agenda. Is there any other discussion from any member on any of these topics for Art? Questions? Go ahead, Catlo, please jump in.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for what information shared today. I think I'm struggling a little bit just trying to wrap my head around kind of the wastewater side of things, as more of my background was the water supply side of things. Wondering, not to create extra work, wondering if this has been done in recent years and maybe just some information that could be shared. But thinking about rate comparisons across different wastewater districts, maybe level of treatments, cost comparisons, especially as we're looking at the Santa Rita resource facility level of treatments and different options. And then I was just kind of curious I know we're talking about, it's a rate across the entire district, but would it be helpful to better understand the rates by or not rates, but costs by sewer shed, and just kind of the cost comparisons, especially thinking about as new developments coming online, it's what does that cost, and making sure we're adequately capturing with new development expected costs or current costs. And sorry if that's a little muddled. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this new world.
Hey, Catlo, I have one of my team members working on updating using next year's budgeted values, the most recent information on our costs, and breaking it down by sewer area. And just for like an example, of course, right now, the average residential sewer bill is about $500 a year, 40-ish dollars a month type of thing. So that's kind of, how we look at it in treating it. But like Mount Lemon, for instance, with our, barely 50 customers up there, they would have to pay like 10,000 a year instead of 500 a year, because that's by far our most expensive operation, of course, due to the economies of scale. So we're going to break it down each of our plants and take the component of conveyance that serves each of those plant and just do a bunch of factors, and we'll have a table that I'll present at one of the upcoming advisory committees, just more as an information thing, and I think it fits with your question. And it's the part of the reason for doing that calculation is if we were to sell the water, the effluent from any facility to the water companies, as I mentioned earlier, if they were interested in buying it, we would probably charge them the cost per acre foot that facility that they were buying it from, what it costs the county type of thing. So, and I think it just from past recollection, that was in the 400 to 500 acre foot dollars per acre foot range, which is similar to kind of what places are paying for water now. So it's kind of seems like it'll be competitive, but I haven't looked at those numbers in a long time. So we'll have that, and it will be an interesting discussion that we'll have as part of our plan for effluent in general from the county's perspective. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I guess just to follow up is I'm kind of curious. I've seen studies out there before of the cost of sprawl, and especially on emergency services and other core services that cities and jurisdictions have to provide. So I'm just kind of curious how that cost of sprawl is impacting kind of the wastewater side of things too. And then the flip side of that, it's been helpful from the water supply perspective, just knowing what are other leading utilities, cost of services, and level of treatment. And that would be helpful to me just to better understand where are we at, especially if, we're being asked to not increase rates. Is that because, where are we on that spectrum of rates in comparison with other districts?
Yeah, we're below the national average with our rates right now, even with these increases being requested. We already got that 3% increase in August of 25 or September of 25. It was, however many months ago. And then the next 3 years, we're showing the 1.75% user fee increase. And even with those, we're still below the national average, but, Phoenix, believe it or not, is one of the cheapest in the whole country, but they also get all their revenue from selling effluent, and they've got the Palo Verde nuclear generating plant. They've got a number of customers that pay premium for that water. And so they have a good revenue source. And, if I owned all the effluent we generated and we didn't have these agreements, our rates would be quite a bit lower, because that's a great revenue stream. But unfortunately, we own a very small amount. As I mentioned earlier, the two big plants that are the lion's share of our effluent, in a true value, I only get 5% of that effluent. So yeah, that's a pretty minuscule revenue stream there.
I'm sorry to dominate, but that brings up another question, Jackson. Going back to Jaime's presentation, I think you had mentioned about credits and response to Eric's question about can some of that water go back to the water providers? Just knowing that, we're facing sub AMA droughts and shortages, as well as potential with cap shortages. Just thinking about how do we reserve some of this water for future water sustainability and not be selling all of it. So it's almost like that cut to the aquifer, cut to the environment. How do we maintain that and build that into our cost structure?
Yeah, and it gets back to, that's why the board's going to have, this is a key policy decision. What is the prioritization and focus of where the effluent should go? How much of it is for, riparian habitat? How much is for, drinking water? How much, all these options, of course, I'm sure the mines out there by the Santa Rita project, because it's now in their neck of the woods, are going to be very interested in throwing money at it, and probably more money than Eric's Green Valley Water Company could throw at it. And so if it's just a money conversation, well, All right, let the highest bidder win, and we'll do the best for our ratepayers, but it's got to include the benefit to the community needs and the overall benefit of Pima County. And that's why we're going to have a number of different options. And, you know, maybe it's not going to be just one answer, it's going to be several, but we'll have to say, okay, well, 10% is for that and 60% is for this thing, and, you know, that type of thing. But it's going to be an interesting conversation. And I'm glad that the board is now having, you know, these working sessions, or, you know, where they're meeting before the regular board meeting. It facilitates these type of conversations that we're going to be putting in front of them in the near future.
Yeah, thank you.
And believe me, I'm sure lots of stakeholders like yourself and others would show up at those board meetings to share their perspective and, hey, give us this bigger percentage, you know, that type of thing. But there's a lot of work still for us to get to that point.
I'll call on myself. So Jackson, I just wanted to chime in on when Catlo was speaking about the comparison of rates to other utilities, other wastewater utilities. As I recall, last year, this time, you had the slide deck on your presentations that had maybe even a couple of slides about that and how much lower Pima County was. There was some useful, as I recall, information about that I don't know, maybe you would dust off a little bit now that we've got the rate increase.
Yeah, every year different agencies put out those type of costs. I think maybe it was NACWA or one of those type of groups. And of course, we cherry pick all the expensive ones and we compare ourselves to them. So we always look good. But no, we'll have an update of that as well.
Yeah, and I think that there has been some discussion on this committee just in general about having some kind of inflationary cost increase, you know, be examined at some point. Jackson points out that we definitely are not following the 3% inflationary pretty much ever. So it's just
well, and eight years of zero. Remember, we had 8 years of no increases, and
exactly
3 of those years in the 8 were very, very, very high inflation years.
Yeah,
you know?
It was the 2020 apocalyptic inflation. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, Catlo, there were some slides of where we were at last year that were presented publicly. I think publicly, well, at least in this meeting, which is public, that had some graphics on that too. All right, so with that, we'll close out kind of all discussions with Art and all the other things that we've been discussing. I don't have a specific reason to think that we need to come up with a meeting right now between now and the 28th. Curious if anyone disagrees with that, but it sounds like Art and company and Jackson are going to go run some scenarios and see if they can get to a yes rate workbook of some nature. And it sounds like that will come next to the RWRAC, perhaps, if we're lucky, around the 28th. So does anybody feel strongly that we should otherwise try and put a subcommittee meeting on the calendar before Memorial Day weekend? All right, hearing none. Let's just keep it open then and figure out whether we need to unprecedentedly need to go into June for some reason. Otherwise, we'll just pen that. So future agenda items. I can't identify a need for a meeting at this point, but if we did have future agenda, it would be to discuss the rate workbook, which is the B item on this agenda. So we would just probably replay that again at such point that we call a meeting. So any other comments from committee? Okay. Hearing none, let's just charge into that call of audience then. Has anybody slipped into the room on the line, wants to say something, or has just been listening to all this and otherwise wants to say something? I haven't called on them. All right, with that, do we have an motion to adjourn then?
I'll move we adjourn.
I'll
Okay, Matt
second.
moved. Great. All in favor of adjournment for today? Say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, well, thank you for a good discussion, and we'll see you all on the 28th.
Adios.
Thank you all.
Have a good day,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
You. Bye-bye.
Thank you.